The shower room of the starship ardent down was one of the few places where John Miller could forget that he was drifting in the endless darkness of space. Life aboard a long-haul escort vessel was filled with noise, duties and constant tension. Machines hummed, engines rumbled, alarms sometime screamed without warning. But the shower, that was his small kingdom of pace. Warm recycled water streamed over his shoulders, washing away the grime of the day. A closed his eyes and breathed slowly. The soft rhythm of drops falling against metal was almost like rain on earth. For a moment, he pretended he was home again, standing under a summer sky, instead of thousands of light years away on a stale ship carrying alien diplomats. He had learned to treasure these moments. They were fragile, private, and deeply personal. John always locked the door, always trusted the tin panel of metal between him and the rest of the ship. Privacy was sacred to him, a rule written in his bones. That was why when the eyes of the door suddenly showed through the room, his eyes shot open. He turned in disbelief, Steam curled in the air fogging his vision, but there was no mistake. Someone had opened the door. A figure stepped in through the mist, not a fellow human crewmate, not the captain, not an accident, it was her.
Lyra?
The young alien girl from the diplomatic group they were assigned to protect. She moved with a grace that made her look like she was floating rather than walking. Her skin shimmered faintly under the steam, soft silver tones catching the light. Her eyes with and glowing faintly blue seemed to pierce through the haze without effort. Long strands of silken hair, pale as moonlight, flowed behind her, dampening slightly from the mist of the shower. And she was staring directly at him. John froze his heart hammered against his chest. The towel was still on the rack, so up clung to his arms. He felt like he had been struck by lightning. What the hell? He shouted, his voice breaking with shock. Lyra did not flinch. She didn't look embarrassed or even surprised. Instead, she tilted her head, her gaze steady and unblinking, as though she had discovered something important. She didn't knock, she didn't explain, she didn't even ask. She just stormed in. John scrambled for the towel, nearly sleeping on the wet floor. His face turned red with both anger and humiliation. Never in his life had someone invaded his privacy so boldly. You can't just barge in here, he barked, clucking the towel to his chest. But Lyra stood calm, her silver eyes locked on him, as though his panic was irrelevant. "Why do you hide yourself?" she asked, her voice soft, almost musical, yet carrying a strange weight. John's jaw dropped. For a moment he thought they had me shared. What are you even talking about? Because it's private, this is my shower, you don't just walk in on someone. Lyra's expression didn't change. She took a slow step forward, the steam swirling around her like a veil. You cover yourself as if you are broken, she sighed. But you are not, you are alive. Her words hit him in a way he didn't understand. Alive, of course he was alive. What kind of nonsense was that? He wasn't ashamed of being alive, he was ashamed of being sane, naked, exposed, vulnerable. This isn't your culture, John snapped. This is mine, and in mine we knock. His voice cracked, and the echo bounced off the metal walls. Lyra blinked on slowly like she was processing something very strange. To her people, bodies were not secrets. They were not things to be hidden or feared. But she saw how tense he was, so he pulled the towel tighter around himself, or his eyes burned with embarrassment. She did not feel the shame he felt. To her, this moment was not shameful at all, it was meaningful. John, however, could not say that. His blood boiled. He had never felt so humiliated in his life. The water kept running, hissing softly, filling the silence that grew thick between them. He expected her to turn around, to realize her mistake and leave, but she didn't. She just kept looking at him, calm and unshaken, as though she had done nothing wrong. Finally, John snapped. He shoved past her, dripping water across the floor, his towel clutched desperately around him. Unbelievable, he muttered, his voice shaking with fury. The corridor outside was cooler, but no less suffocating. He stormed away, wet footprints marking his path, his mind a storm of anger and confusion. Behind him, Lyra remained in the shower room, her eyes following him until the door closed. She had seen something in him, something he didn't want anyone to say, not just his body, not just his skin, she had seen his scars. And she did not look away. John stormed down the corridor, dripping wet, his towel clutched like a leafline. His footsteps echoed on the metal floor, leaving a trail of water behind him. His heart pounded in his chest, louder tante engines humming through the ship's walls. Never in his life had he felt so humiliated, not in training, not in combat, not even when he had filed exams back on Earth. This was worse. Someone had looked at him, really looked at him, when he was at his most vulnerable. And it wasn't just Anione, it was Lyra. The alien girl had been a mystery from the start. The crew called her the Pearl, not only because of her shimmering skin but because she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made people stop and stare. She was part of a diplomatic mission, but she never spoke much. She moved like someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. And she had walked into his shower without hesitation. John's face burned with shame and anger. Who do stat, e muttered to himself, gripping the towel tighter, who just walks in like that. Behind him, the shower door had closed with a soft ease, sealing Lyra inside the mist-filled room. She hadn't followed him this time, but her calm gaze still haunted him, her question echoing in his ears. "We do you ide yourself?" He hated those words. They sounded innocent, but they felt like an accusation. Later, after drying off and throwing on his uniform, John found himself in the mess hall. The place was half full, crew members eating in silence or chatting in low voices. The Ardent Dawn was a military ship, not a cruise liner, so the mess was plain metal tables, bolted stalls, and the faint smell of reheated meals. John grabbed a cup of water and sat in the far corner, hoping to disappear. But the image of Lyra walking through the stone wall not leave him. He had seen many strange things in space planets with storms that never ended, beasts drifting between stars, but nothing had ever unsettled him like this on a girl. He rubbed his forehead. He wasn't just embarrassed. He was angry because she didn't seem to understand what she had done. To her it had been nothing, to him it had been everything. A chair scraped beside him. He didn't even need to look up, he knew it was her. Lyra sat down without asking, her posture straight, her hands folded neatly on the table. She wore the flowing clothes her people favored, soft fabric that shifted like liquid when she moved. Her glowing eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel naked all over again. "You're angry," she said simply. John glared. "Of course I'm angry. You walked in on me while I was showering." Lyra tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. "We do stis make you angry." John's voice rose and a few crew members glanced their way. "Because it's private. Humans don't do that. You don't just barge into someone's shower unless you've lost your mind." Lyra didn't flinch. Her calmness made his frustration burn out there. "You cover your body as if it is a crime," she sighed softly. "But it is not. You hide your scars as if they are a shame, but they are not. They are a proof you're alive." John's throat tightened. He hadn't realized she had seen those. The burn across his shoulder, the knife mark near his ribs, the jagged scar along his thigh. He always tried to hide them long sleeves, careful posture and eating to avoid questions. His anger flared again, this time mixed with pain. "You don't just look at people's scars," he snapped. "That's not your rigged." Lyra's eyes softened. She leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. "But they are your truth, we do you fear truth." John pushed back his chair so hard it scraped loudly. The mess hall went silent for a moment, all eyes flicking toward them before quickly looking away. He stood, fists clenched at his sides. "You don't understand," he sighed, his voice rogue. "You don't understand anything about humans. Privacy matters, boundaries matter. You don't just get to walk in and decide what my truth is." Lyra stayed seated, her face calm, but her eyes shone with something deeper, curiosity, sadness, and maybe even a hint of disappointment. "You think walls protect you," she sighed quietly, "but some intimate walls are cages." Her words cut through him sharp and clean. He wanted to argue, to yell, to tell her she was wrong, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he turned and stormed out of the mess hall, his chest ticked, his mind spinning. Back in his quarters, John sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at his hands. His knuckles were weak from clenching too hard. He hated how calm she had been. He hated how her words kept showing inside him, no matter how hard he tried to shoot them out. "Walls are cages." He looked down at his arm, pulling back the sleeve just enough to set a pale line of an old scar. He remembered the fear, the screaming, the smell of burning steel. He remembered surviving. e remembered covering it again and again as if feeding it all the rasete memory. Ma ibe she had said Muretane wanted to admit. But that didn't excuse her, that didn't make it rigged. Eli back on his bunk staring at the ceiling. The of the engines filled the silence steady and endless. Out there beyond the metal wall star stretched forever, and there was trapped in his own anger, his own shame. L'ira sfaccia appiare din his mind again, calmando un shaken er voice clear. We do yo ide yourself. John closed his eyes but the question refused to fade. The ardent down was never a quiet ship. So mevere, so mating always made noise, the lotrum of the engines, the of vents, the distant chatter of crew. But after John's outburst in the mess hall, the silence that spread through the corridors was different. Iavi, awkward, Everione had seen him storm off, and Everione had seen Lyra sitting still, calm as stone. Whispers began to travel through the ship. Humans stalked, and so did the aliens. Some side John had disrespected the envoy, other side Lyra had crossed a line, but none spoke at all loudly. None wanted to be caught in the storm between them. John tried to keep his head down, focusing on his duties, running diagnostics, checking weapon systems, keeping the escort vessel in top shape. But no matter where he went, he felt eyes on him. The crowd didn't say it out loud, but he called at their thoughts, he lost his temper, he shouted at her, he caused trouble. The humiliation didn't fade, it grew avier with a very passing hour. 2 days later, the captain summoned them both. The briefing room was small and cold, lined with dark panels and a wide screen that displayed the star map. John stood rigidly on his side, his hands locked behind his back. Lyra sat on the other side, her posture calm, her face unreadable. The captain, a broad-shouldered woman with grey streaks in her hair, rubbed her temples as if already tired of the situation. Listen, she said firmly, her voice carrying the weight of authority. I don't care what happened in that show Rome. I don't care about your different customs. What I do care about is that this ship is on a diplomatic mission. If either of you causes more trouble, it will not just embarrass me, it will embarrass our entire fleet. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am, John muttered. Lyra only inclined her head in a grateful nod. The captain's gasen arrowed. Good, then solvetis. I want piace between you. You don't have to like each other, but you will respect each other dismissed. They left the room to jeter. The corridor was empty except for the 2 of them. John walked faster, hoping to outpace her, but Lyra's long, graceful steps kept up easily, e finally stopped spinning to face her. You don't get it, sighed his voice low and ticked. You made me look like a fool. Everyone's talking about it. You think this is nothing, but it's everything. You can't just walk into people's lives like that. Lyra's glowing eyes studied him calmly. And you think I'm the only one who does not understand. But it is you alive with fear of being seen. You are angry because he looked. What did you lose when he saw you? John's throat tightened. He talked of the scar saga and of the shame he had buried for years. He clenched his fists, his nails beating into his palms. It's not about what he lost, he snapped. It's about respect, boundaries, privacy. We cover ourselves because we respect each other's space. Lyra tilted her head, her silver hair falling softly over her shoulder. Respect or shame. You speak of privacy, but what you mean is fear. You fear being seen as you are. You fear your own story written on your skin. Her words struck too close. John felt at ease in his chest, and champagne mixing like fear and smoke. You don't know me, he sighed harshly. You don't know what I've been through, so don't pretend you understand. For the first time, Lyra's calm broke. Her eyes shimmered brighter and her voice carried a sharper edge. And you do not try to understand me. To my people eating scarce is like eating bread. We honor them, we honor survival. You cover yourself as though survival is shameful, though you say how strange you look to me. The words hung between them like a blade. John opened his mouth to reply, but nothing came out. He was furious, yet a part of him, the part he tried to bury now she wasn't wrong. He was ashamed. He hated those scars, hated the memories attacked to them. But admitting that to her impossible. So instead he shook his head and walked away, his chest ticked, his thoughts loud. That evening the crowd's mood shifted. Some supported John. Some whispered that Lyra's way of saying the world was with her more honest, the divide grew. John sat alone in the observation deck, staring at the endless stars. The vastness usually gave in pace, but tonic tit only reminde di most malam fragile e felt. His reflection in the glass showed a tired man with shadows under his eyes, a man running from his own past. The door is open, and didn't need to lock to know it was a again. Lyra walked softly to stand beside him, a reflection glowing faintly in the glass. They both stared out into the abyss. For a long time neither spoke. Finally John whispered, "We can't you just leave me alone." Lyra's voice was quiet but steady, because he saw truth in you, and truth should not be hidden. John's fists clenched, his hair tugged. He wanted to push her words away to cover them the way covered his scars, but the inside a part of him was afraid she might be rigged. And that was the worst part of all. The captain was not a patient woman. After 3 more days of tense silence between John and Lyra, she had seen an og. The crew had started to feel the weight of the conflict. A very glance, a very whispered conversation carried the shadow of their clash. So the captain gave them no choice. "You two will meet tonight," she ordered. "You will talk. I don't care if you shout, cry or sit in silence until dawn, but you will stay in that room until I believe you can work to get her again. That's an order." Neither John nor Lyra argued. Orders were orders. The observation deck was chosen as the meeting place. It was quiet, with a glass wall showing the endless sea of stars. The hum of the engines felt distant air, and the galaxy stretched like a painting across black velvet. John arrived first, arms crossed thickly over his chest. He wore his uniform jacket zipped, as if layers of fabric cold shielded him from more than just cold. His jaw was set, his eyes hard, but inside he was restless. He had no idea what he would say. When the door is open, Lyra entered without hesitation. She moved with her usual grace, the soft folds of her clothing brushing lightly against the floor. Her silver hair glimmered faintly in the starlight, her glowing eyes calm but alert. For a long while neither spoke. They stood on opposite sides of the deck, separated by silence and pride. Finally Lyra broke it. "You are still angry." John let out a harsh laugh. "You think." She tilted her head, her expression unreadable, and Jerry se assertant truth. That made his stomach twist, though he refused to show it. He turned toward the stars, clenching his fists. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole ship. You made me feel like he was weak, like he was something to be studied." Lyra's voice softened. "He did not laugh at you, he did not mock you, he saw you, that is all." John's punto face, his voice sharp. "That's the problem. You don't just get to say people like that. You don't get to walk into their lives and tear away the walls they've built. You don't understand what those walls mean." Lyra stepped closer, her eyes glowing more brightly in the dim light. "Then explain. Tell me what you fear." John froze his throat tightened. He wanted to shout again, to push her away with anger, but her voice wasn't mocking, it was quiet, almost pleading. His breath came unsteady. "You saw my scars." "Yes," she said simply. He looked away ashamed. "Teire not stories, teire mistakes, teire failures, teire things hidrater forged." For the first time Lyra's calm broke slightly, her eyes softened with something like sadness. "On my world, scars are not mistakes. They are honored, they mean you lived, that you endured, they are a proof of strength, not weakness." John shook his head. "Not for humans, not for me, they are just reminders. Every time he said them, he remembered the pain the people he couldn't save, the things he did wrong." Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then you carry them as chains, we carry them as wings." Her words pierced him more deeply than he expected. He wanted to argue, but the stars outside seemed to echo her truth. He tugged off the burn across his shoulder, the fire that had consumed half a squad before he rescue came. He tugged off the knife wound near his ribs, the ambush where he had been the only one to walk away. He tugged off all the nicks he had stared at his own skin, hating the stories it told. Lyra stepped closer again, so near no a cold set a faint shimmer of her skin. "He did not storm into your shower to insult you," she sighed. "He came because he saw your pain, and he could not understand why you would hide your survival as though it were a shame." John's chest ached, he clenched his fists tighter. "You don't get it," he muttered. "You can't just decide that for me. Those scars aren't noble, they're just ugly." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. To me they are beautiful, not because they are smooth or pleasing to look at, but because they speak of life, of battles endured, of fear that cold not take you, that is beauty. Words hit him like a blow, e turned away un abletometer gaze. His throat felt thick is a stinging, e didn't want to hear this, e didn't want to feel this. The silence straight che they avian raw. Finally John muttered, "You don't understand humans." "And you don't understand me," Lyra replied, her voice steady but gentle, "but perhaps we can try." John let out a long, shaky breath. He wanted to apologize, but the words stuck in his throat. He wasn't ready. He wasn't sure he could be ready. So instead he said nothing. Lyra didn't push for her. She only stepped back, giving him space, and he still soft with something that looked dangerously close to compassion. They stood like that for a long time, two figures against the vastness of the stars, on a rapid inshame theater in truth. Neither willing to surrender fully, but neither walking away. It was not an apology, not yet. But it was a beginning. The ship drifted quietly through the dark. Stars glimmered beyond the hull, endless and unreachable. For most of the crew, it was an ordinary night. Lights dimmed, always grew silent, and the constant hum of the engines became a lullaby. But for John Miller, sleep would not come. He lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, his hands behind his head, his mind restless. Every time he closed his eyes. He saw her face, Lyra's calm eyes glowing faintly like captured starlight. Her words kept repeating louder than the ship's engines, louder than his own heartbeat. "They are proud you lived." He had do much it shock him. For years he had worked hard to bury his scars under layers of fabric, silence and discipline. He kept his sleeves long, his collar sig. He never explained the marks, never let anyone stare long enough to wonder. To him they weren't medals, they were failures burned into flesh. But Lyra had looked at them differently, not with pity, not with disgust, with respect. That thought unsettled him most of all. He turned on his side, pulling the blanket there. Memories came uninvited. The fear that swallowed half his squad during a ride, the screams in the smoke, the burning metal collapsing above them. He remembered dragging himself out, his shoulders corked, his lungs filled with smoke. He survived, others hadn't. Then the knife wound, an ambush in a narrow alley on a colony world. He remembered the blood sinking in, the cold shock, the frantic fight to push his attacker away. He had survived that too, but when he took at the scarnear his ribs, he didn't feel strength, he felt guilt. A very scar carried a story, and the very story was a heavy. He had believed eating them was the only way to live without breaking apart. But Lyra, she had walked into a storm without hesitation. She had looked at his scars and seen something he never called. "Wings, not giants." John sat up suddenly, rubbing his face with both hands. The room felt too small, too tight, and needed air. The corridors were dim, lit only by soft blue emergency lights. Most of the crew were asleep, but the ship never truly rested. Somewhere in the distance he heard footsteps, the murmur of voices, the stadium of life support. He wandered aimlessly until he reached the engine by. The heart of the ardent down throbbed with deep, steady rhythm. The massive core glowed faintly, filling the chamber with soft light. The air was warm, vibrating with quiet power. And there she was. Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor near the engine, her silver hair falling around her like a curtain of light. She seemed perfectly at home in the human diet. Her eyes were closed, her breathing slow. She looked as if she were listening to the ship's heartbeat. John froze and talked about turning back, but she opened her eyes before a cold move. "You cannot sleep," she sighed softly, as if she had been expecting him. John's mouth went dry, e cleared his throat, neither can you, apparently. Lyra smiled faintly, sleep come se asili totose with piace inside, you have no piace. The words stung because they were true, e sighed unleaned against the railing, folding his arms. "You think you've got me all figured out, don't you?" Lyra shook her head gently. "No, I do not claim to know all of you, but I say what you try to hide, and I do not understand we." John hesitated, his pride screamed at him to stay silent, but the quietum of the engine, the calm glow in her eyes, it loosened something inside him. "They are not just scars," he sighed slowly, teire reminders, e veri mark mean someone i coldent save, e veri line mean si filed. Lira tilted eread, jo survived, o istat failure. Because I lived when others didn't, John snapped his voice rogue, you don't get it, e very scaris awaked, a reminder of what he lost, he don't say strength when he look at them, he say ghosts. Silence filled the chamber after his outburst, his chest rose and fell quickly, his hands trembling slightly, e hadn't meant to say so much. Liras gazze softened, she rose gracefully and walked closer her steps quiet. She stopped only a foot away, her presence calm, steady, almost grounding. We all carry ghosts, she sighed gently. My people too, but we do not hide from them. We carry them with pride because they remind us of what we endured together. Scarce are not only your story, they are also the story of those who stood with you. You carry them for all of them. Her words were like a knife and a balmatonce. John swallowed hard, his throat tigged. He wanted to argue again but he couldn't. Deep down, a kneutere was truth in her voice. For a moment, neither moved. The engine hummed stars drifted outside the teul, and two very different souls stood face to face in the warmth of the machine's glow. Finally, John looked away, his voice hoarse. You embarrassed me, Lyra, you made me feel small. Lyra's reply was calm, almost tender. He did not mean to. He only wished for you to say yourself as he saw you strong, alive, enduring. The words struck deep. His anger, his shame, his guilt they all swirled inside him like a stormy cold, not quiet. And yet in her voice he heard something else, not judgment, not pity, something gentler, something that scared him even more. That night when John finally returned to his quarters e sat on his bunk in silence, e pulled up his sleeve exposing the long scar across his forearm. For years he had hated looking at it, tonicked e stared at it longer than usual. Was it truly only a chain, or could it be something more? He didn't know, but for the first time he wondered. And wondering was the first crack in the walls he had built around himself. The ardent down had known pace for many weeks. Its crew moved like a family, busy but calm, carrying out their duties under the endless sea of stars. But pace never lasted long in space. John was in the mess hall when the alarms began. A sharp siren cut through the air, red lights flashing across the ceiling. Cups rattled on the table as the ship shook conce twitch like a beast under attack. Crew members scrambled to their feet. Impact on the starboard side, a voice shouted over the com, "All breach in Sector 3. John's instincts, sharpened by years of war, took over. He was on his feet before his mind caught up, rushing toward the armory. The ship trembled again harder this time, and the floor seemed to roll beneath his boots. Not pirates, another voice reported. Its debris filled asteroid fragments, shells are refiling. The mess hall filled with panic, but John didn't panic. He moved fast, his hands sure, his mind sharp. The stormy incident had no time to reason. Survival demanded focus. He grabbed his jar and he headed towards Sector 3. Along the way, he saw Lyra Alreaditere working with a repair team. Her silver hair was tied back, her pale hands pressed against a glowing panel, her voice calm as she gave instructions. The alien girl seemed untooked by fear, her glowing eyes steady even as the ship groaned. John forced his way to her side. What's the damage? She looked at him, sweatly staining on her temple. All breach spreading. If we do not sail it soon, the section will be lost. The ship shuddered again, a loud metallic scream echoing through the walls. Somewhere a pipe burst, releasing steam. Crew members coughed and shouted. The danger grew worse by the second. John clenched his jaw. Tell me what to do. Lyra hesitated only a breath, then nodded. We must weld the breach, but the pressure outside it is dangerous. Danger doesn't scare me, John muttered. He pulled on a protective suit, kicking the sails with practiced movements. Lyra moved beside him, preparing her own equipment. John's chest tightened at the sight. You're not going out there, he snapped. Her calm eyes met his. You cannot hold the plate alone, it requires two. He wanted to argue to keep her safe inside the ship, but there was no time. The alarms screamed louder, the corridor lights flickered, and the floor shook with another impact. Fine growled, but stay close to me. The airlock hissed as it opened. Cold air rushed past them, carrying the emptiness of space. John and Lyra stepped out onto the outer hull, magnetic boats clamping against steel. The sight talk is breath away. The stars stretched endless around them, sharp and cold. The breach gaped in the hull like a wound, sparks spitting from torn metal. Beyond it, fragments of rock and each hurtled past a deadly storm of debris. The ship groaned, the wound widening under pressure. Now Lyra showed their voices steady through the com. To jeter they carried the heavy patch plate across the hull. Each step was a battle against the pool of emptiness and the danger of fleeing shards. John's arms burned as he held the wagged, his scars aching under the strain. But he did not falter. Lyra pressed her glowing hands against the metal, energy sparking as she fused the plate. The breach resisted, fighting back with shrieking sparks, but she did not waver. John shielded her with his body, taking the brunt of the debris that struck their suits. His shoulders screamed with pain as a shard bounced off, but he held his ground. Almost Lyra called her voice firm, her face glowing with determination. John gritted his teeth, sweat dripping inside his helmet. A very muscle shock, a very scar burned, but he held on. He talked of the ghosts he carried, the men and women he had lost. For the first time he didn't see only their deaths, he saw their courage, their fight. And he realized he was still fighting not just for himself, but for everyone still alive. With a final burst of light, Lyra sealed the plate. The shrieking stopped, the sparks died, and the breach held firm. The ship stabilized beneath their feet. Pressure restored, the comms officer's voice crackled in their ears. Ulsealed, God work out there. John let out a long, shaking breath. His arms fell heavy at his sides. He leaned against the packed plate his chest having. Beside him, Lyra's glow dimmed as she lowered her hands. Her face was pale, exhausted, but her eyes still shone like starlight. She looked at him through the helmet. You say you carry strength. Your scars did not fail you, they carried you through. John stared at her, unable to speak. His throat was ticked, his heart pounding not only from the fight but from her words. For years he had believed his scars were nothing but proof of failure. But now, standing on the edge of the void, alive because of his fight, he wondered if Lyra was rigged. Back inside the ship, the crew greeted them with cares. Some clapped John on the shoulder, others thanked Lyra with shining eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by relief. But John barely heard them. He walked silently through the corridor, his helmet tucked under his arm, his mind far away. He found himself in the observation deck, where the stars stretched endless against the glass. Lyra joined him quietly, standing close but not talking. You saved them, she sighed softly. John shook his head, we saved them. She smiled faintly to jeter. He turned to look at her, really look at her, the silver of her hair, the glow in her eyes, the quiet strength in her small frame. She was nothing like the soldiers he had on she fought beside, yet she had stood with him against the void without hesitation. Something shifted in him then. The storm inside did not vanish, but it softened. For the first time in years he felt something other than guilt. He felt hope. Exhaled slowly, his voice low. Maybe you're rigged, Lyra, maybe scars aren't just chains, maybe their wings too. Her smile widened, and for a moment, the stars seemed to shine brighter beyond the glass. The days after the breach passed slowly, but the memory of it stayed alive in everyone's mind. The crew still spoke about the moment the ship had almost been lost. About how John and Lyra had stepped out into the void and pulled it back from destruction. To John thought the real battle had begun afterward. He sat alone in his quarters unenig, staring at his arm. The scartere looked the same as always, a judged pale line that never faded, but something had changed inside him. When he touched it with his finger, he no longer felt only guilt. He remembered Lyra's steady voice, her calm strength beside him, and the way his body had endured when he talked it would fail. For the first time in years, he whispered aloud. It didn't kill me. The words were small, but they felt like breaking chains. The next day, he found himself walking toward the training bay. A group of younger recruits were sparring, their movements sharp but uncertain. They noticed John in the doorway and froze, nervous under his guts. Everyone knew John Miller, the scarred veteran, the man who never spoke much, who kept his sleeves long and his face cold. E almost turned away, old habits whispered to ide to remain silent, but 10 liras words et showed in his mind, your scars are a proof you lived. E stepped forward. Your stance is weak, e toldone of the recruits is voice calm but firm. Shift your weight to your back foot, if you fall forward you're finished. The young man blinked then quickly adjusted. John corrected anoter antenna noter. Within minutes he was moving among them, taking guiding his voice steady. For the first time in years he wasn't eating, he was sharing. And when the recruits looked at him, they didn't say a broken man, they saw a survivor, a care, someone worth listening to. Later he found Lyra in the observation de Cagain. She stood quietly watching the stars like old friends. John hesitated in the doorway then joined her. You've been busy, she sighed without turning. Word travels fast, he muttered. They say you trained the recruits for 2 hours, and that you smiled. John gave a small snort, rumors exaggerate. Lyra finally turned to face him. Did they exaggerate the smile? He paused then allowed the corner of his mouth to lift just slightly, maybe not. Her laughter was soft like silver bells in the quiet room. Silence stretched between them comfortably this time. John looked at her profile the way her hair caught the faint light of the stars. For weeks he had fogged his own walls, refusing to let anyone too close. But she had walked past the very wall as if they weren't there. We may ask it suddenly, his voice was low, almost rogue. Why did you care so much about my scars? You could have left me alone. Lyra tilted her head, her expression gentle. Because he saw a warrior who did not know he was still alive. You were breathing but not living. He could not walk past that. Her words cut deep but they yelled too. John swallowed hard, looking away toward the stars. He thought they made me weak, he admitted. He thought they chained me to the past. And now she asked. He looked down at his hands, turning them over. The scars were still there unchanged, but his heart was like there. Now I think maybe they wings. E have wings sure, but wings altessame. Lyra say softened. She reacted out slowly, placing her hand over his. Warm spread through him, steady and real. Yes, she whispered, wings of fear, born from pain but strong enough to flee. The weeks passed and the change in John did not go unnoticed. He trained with the recruits daily, his voice calm, his movements sharp. He joined the crew at meals, even telling short stories of old battles, not the painful ones, but the honest sweet lessons. So Metimes even laughed. The storm inside him never fully disappeared. He still woke some nights with memories e avi on his chest. But when he did, he no longer felt alone. Lyra was there, always near, always steady. She never asked for more than his honesty and slowly he gave it. One night after another long day, John stood alone on the outer deck, the stars burning bright above. He rolled up his sleeve, letting the cold air touch the scars on his arm. He didn't need them anymore, he didn't need to. A voice came behind him, do you still hate them? He turned to say Lyra, her silver hair glowing faintly in the starlight. John shook his head slowly. No, I think he finally understand. They don't just many failed, they many fogged, they many endured. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes shining. They many you are still here. John nodded his throat ticked for words. For years he had believed they carried nothing but ghosts. But now, standing under the stars with her at his side, he realized they carried something else. Life, and for the first time he wanted to keep living it. The ardent down sailed onward through the void, carrying its unknown worlds. John Miller stood among them, no longer the silent, scarred soldier reading from the past, but the man who had endured it and who would keep enduring, with wings of fear strong enough to lift him forward. And when Lyra looked at him, she didn't say only a woman, she saw what humanity truly was. Fragile, broken, scarred, and yet unyielding. Humanity was more than its wounds. Humanity was the strength to rise again and again and again. And John Miller's scars and all was proof of it.